The first week of free agency is officially in the books for the NFL, so let's talk about how that is going to affect our fantasy football teams going forward from a dynasty perspective and, of course, just from a standard redraft perspective as well. Okay, so I got 3 guys that I'm going to go into depth into, and then I have a few guys that I kind of like, but I still want to do a little more research and really see what they do in the draft before I make any, not rash decisions, but rash decisions. And then I have a few guys that I'm pretty much staying away from for how much I believe their value has skyrocketed. Obviously, to an extent, for anybody, if you can get them for the right price, you do, but I don't know if there will be a right price for those guys. Let's start off with the first guy that I'm going to get into detail with, and that is with David Montgomery of the Houston Texans, now formerly the Detroit Lions. And I think everybody's going to have the same opinion. Everybody is going to believe, at least I think, that he is going to go into Houston day one, be their number one guy moving forward. And he doesn't have to be the number one guy by some huge split, right? It's going to be, I think, in my opinion, is going to look very similar to what Joe Mixon looked like in 2024. And in 2024, you saw Joe Mixon get over 1,000 yards rushing with only 14 games played. We saw him have right at 12 touchdowns for the season on about 36 catches for 309 yards. That's pretty much almost the exact stat line I expect David Montgomery to play. I think maybe he plays 15 games, so we see a little bump in the stat. I do think he probably misses a game or two. But regardless, that's roughly exactly what I expect from David Montgomery. Now, the question is, what does everyone else expect? There's a lot of talk that people are expecting him to go off and be a great premier running back, and if that's the case, your fantasy league members have that, and there's no trade for him. There's no point. He's not worth that. But the way my dynasty draft works and the way we're doing it is it's an extreme fantasy football league is what it's called, and there's free agency every year. We do an auction draft, and that is our free agency, and that is how much the players play for throughout the season. We have a salary cap. I could explain more if y'all are curious. I can make a video about it, but the way it works is we're going to have a free agency, and the way I think about it is how much am I willing to spend my cap space? How much of my cap space am I willing to spend on David Montgomery? And I think he is, without question, a solidified low-end RB1. When I was just listing off Joe Mixon's stats, those were the stats of the number 9 running back in fantasy that year. I think that is about where David Montgomery ends. I think we see him in from the 9th running back, the latest the 15th, so we're talking about low RB1, high RB2. That is about where I see his floor and his ceiling this season. Now, we're talking about going forward, again, because we're talking about dynasty leagues. He is 28 years old, so that's something to take into consideration, but I also kind of feel like age is a little overrated when it comes to this. I feel as if I should say that dynasty leagues maybe rely a little too much on rookies, and I think people are a little too rookie and too pick hungry, similar to the NFL in real life, might I say. I think if there's a chance to go out there and go get a guy, you just do it, and I think David Montgomery is a perfect example of that. And again, it depends on what the guy who has David Montgomery feels. If he feels like he's got a guy that's going to be top 5 this year, not doing business with him, because that's not who David Montgomery is going to be. But I do think he is a guy that is going to go out there and play very well. You look at 2023 for David Montgomery, which I know 2 years ago, but he was firmly splitting carries with Jahmyr Gibbs back then. And you saw him in 14 games get 1,015 yards and have about 16 catches for 117 yards receiving. And we saw him finish as the RB15. The next year, we see him finish as the RB16. This last year, he finishes all the way back as RB32 because Jahmyr Gibbs took such a big step. They let him just run with it. And we saw David Montgomery's attempts and just opportunity drop significantly. I do think that he at minimum, is getting what he got in Detroit in 2023, which a little over 200 carries. I think we probably see in that 220 to 250 mark for David Montgomery for as far as attempts go. I think he's going to be the goal line back, so I think we see a lot of touchdowns, double-digit touchdowns, and if he's doing that, then he's going to be a top 15 running back in fantasy football. That's not surprising, though. I don't think that is blowing anybody's socks off over here. But next, we're going to go on to Travis Etienne, or Travis Etienne now, apparently. I don't know. Somebody will correct me on that. I'm going to keep calling him Etienne until I see other people do something different, because I'm a follower sometimes. Not actually. But sometimes when it comes to stuff like that, I don't know. Yeah, I guess he asked for Etienne, so I'm calling him Travis Etienne now. There we go. Made a decision. Anyway, here we go. Travis Etienne. What I'm excited about is to see him in this Kellen Moore scheme. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities to catch the ball out of the backfield. We saw Kamara. Granted, Kamara is kind of known for catching the ball out of the backfield, but to an extent, so is Travis Etienne. That is going to be so hard to get used to. Anyway, last year we saw Alvin Kamara get around 3.5 targets a game, and Travis Etienne, gosh, I'm sorry. I can't stop making a big deal about it. Just call him Travis, got about 3.1 targets a game. I think we see that stay roughly the same. He was 10th last year in targets among running backs, and I think, again, we see him have another top 10 season in targets out of the backfield. I've become someone who is very anti-drafting players on bad teams. I don't know if the Saints are a bad team anymore. Look at the end of their season last year. Yes, they finished horribly. I think they have the 8th pick overall, 9th pick somewhere in there. So yes, of course, their season finished horribly. But look at the last 5-6 games of the season. I'll pull them up just to get specific here. Last season, you saw the New Orleans Saints win 4 of their last 5 games of the season, scoring 20 plus in almost all of them except the one they lost. That is really good. You see Shuck throw for 259, 333, 308, 272. He had a 144, but 239, 243, 282. These are all passing yards by Tyler Shuck. This offense actually looks pretty solid going forward. You're now adding a running back who isn't old like Alvin Kamara was and injured like Alvin Kamara was. You're now adding a running back that can go in there and do the things that Alvin Kamara used to do. I would assume that they're going to add a receiver as well. I think they're going to get Lemon in the first round. I think this is going to be an offense. I don't know about the team, but I think this is going to be an offense that is actually pretty good and makes me more likely, more excited to draft from this roster. Travis Etienne being one of them. Olave, a little less depending on what they do in the first round. Maybe even Shuck in the late rounds. That feels insane to me, but I mean, I'm pro taking 2 quarterbacks in fantasy drafts now, especially in redraft leagues, especially if I'm not going quarterback high end. I'm going a high-end quarterback early. I'm not taking 2. But if I'm going to take a flyer on a quarterback, like last season, my guys I love to take were Dak Prescott. Specifically, Dak Prescott. I like Drake May a lot. I like J.J. McCarthy. That didn't work out. But the other 2, only think about the other 2. Think about me being right, not wrong, ever. Anyway, when you talk about those guys, I like taking 2 of them just because it gives you more odds. If you're taking flyers, one of them will work out. Shuck might be one of those guys for me. Now, maybe not. Maybe by the time the season starts, I'm off of him and I don't really care anymore. But at this moment, right here, right now, Shuck feels like a guy that I am taking a flyer on late in rounds and redrafts. And that just is a testament, I think this offense has potential to be really good. And I'm not really scared to take players from this team. I'm not taking too many. It pretty much stops at Shuck, Etienne, and Olave, depending on what they do in the first round, but I'm not too terribly scared of it. Whereas last season, I was completely out on taking Saints players. All right, last guy we're going to talk about in depth at least is Jalen Nailor. I really, really like Jalen Nailor. I am a Minnesota Viking fan, so I saw him up close and personal. I, of course, watched every single game last season. And what that dude does is win on one-on-ones. He is very, very good at winning against a one-on-one matchup. He also has really good hands. I think that would surprise you. Granted, it's not a huge sample size. It's on 11 targets. That's it. But he has a contested catch rate of 72.7%. That's number 5 on the season last year. Again, not a huge sample size, but for a guy who's kind of known for winning one-on-ones, which is what he does, he also is really good at contested catches. When J.J. McCarthy went in, he got injured, missed some time. When he came back, a lot of the times it's 3rd and long. You got to get a catch. He's not throwing to Justin Jefferson. He's throwing to Jalen Nailor. It's because that's where the one-on-one coverage is and all that stuff. And you're not going there any other time. I'm in no way trying to say Jalen Nailor is better than Justin Jefferson. That would be stupid. But what I am saying is that Jalen Nailor really has a chance to go out there into Vegas and be a real weapon for Fernando Mendoza in this Raider offense. I do think we see them add another option. I think they are honestly probably planning on drafting a receiver round 1 with the Max Crosby pick that got taken away with that whole thing. So I do think that they aren't going to go into the year with Jalen Nailor being their number 1 wide receiver. But of course, now you have to question how good is that other guy going to be. There is a legitimate chance that Jalen Nailor is, at least to start the season, the number 1 wide receiver for the Vegas Raiders, which of course just opens up a ton of opportunity. Those are the 3 guys I really wanted to talk about. There's other names that I'm interested in. I'm still currently doing my research on to make a fully informed video and decision before coming to y'all with. Guys like Wan'Dale Robinson on the Titans, I think, is very interesting. The thing that got me, though, is it was very opportunity based in New York. A lot of what I think his successes were, which is the sheer amount of times he got targeted. So the question is, do I think that is going to follow him over to Tennessee? And I'm leaning yes, because targets are usually earned, especially in the NFL. So he is getting open. That's why he's getting targeted. And at the moment, at least, he is the number 1 wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans. So I do believe that that feels like a good route to go as of now. Isaiah Likely going to the Giants feels like he fits the mold of this New York Giants offense. I feel like Jackson Dart's really going to love him. If you look at last season, down the stretch, Jackson Dart really developed a good chemistry with tight end Theo Johnson, and to the point where he became a viable starting fantasy option for you in pinches on a week-to-week basis. So that makes me think that Isaiah Likely, who is more talented, if he can get on that same connection with Jackson Dart, should do very well and maybe even just be a starter, like not even a week-to-week, but a starter in fantasy football next season. The other guy that I think I like, but we need to see what else happens this season, especially with the draft, is Michael Pittman Jr. now on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm not a big DK Metcalf fan, and if Aaron Rodgers is back as the quarterback for Pittsburgh next season, I don't think he's the biggest DK Metcalf fan. Given the Michael Pittman, who is a dependable wide receiver who plays that big slot role, I think it's something that Aaron Rodgers would really like. Obviously, if it's not Aaron, we'll have to see who the quarterback is. And that's another reason why I'm not going in on and saying you should get him, because I'd like to see things play out first. But that is a guy that I have my eyes on, and we'll have to see what happens down the stretch, because I would really like Michael Pittman in Pittsburgh. Before I go, I just want to give a couple names I'm wary of that you might have been expecting to see. One is Mike Evans in San Francisco. I think he's kind of proven at this point that he's not going to play a full season for you, and I'm trying to avoid injuries at all cost. Not that I'm not drafting anybody who's ever had an injury. That's a bit extreme, and that's not what I'm saying. I just think he has shown at this point in his career he is not going to be dependable on a week-to-week basis. Of course, he's also regressed a little bit as he is getting older, and I just don't know if he's going to even be the number 1 wide receiver on San Fran. As far as talent goes, I think he is, but I think as far as production goes, I think we could realistically, if Pearsall plays a full season, we could realistically say he is going to outproduce Mike Evans. Now, I'm not saying go get Pearsall, because he kind of has that same issue. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to San Francisco's receiving core. Mike Evans has injury history. Pearsall does. George Kittle does. I have no clue what I'm doing with their offense at the moment. McCaffrey as well. And lastly, the number 1 name that I think a lot of people are excited for, but I am going to pull back from, is Kenneth Walker. I get that he is great, and I've said before in some of my other videos on my Zealous Sports page, Kenneth Walker is my favorite player, specifically my favorite running back to watch in the entire NFL. He is so fun to watch. He is so good at making people miss. My issue with him is health. And when I look at the makeup of Kansas City's roster, they didn't do much to let him be relieved and have other guys come in to take some of the load off of him. I just don't trust Kenneth Walker to go through a full season. Seattle running Charbonnet out there all the time wasn't because that's what they wanted to do necessarily, which Charbonnet is good, so I'm sure they didn't mind it. But Kenneth Walker is him. He is clearly the number 1 running back on Seattle, but it's because of health, and you want him to stay healthy. You look at his injury history, there's a lot of it. I think they're going to rely heavy on him to start the season, as they're potentially running out Justin Fields because Mahomes is an ACL tear. We don't know if he'll be back week 1, potentially running out Fields and Walker. They'll use Walker heavy. I think he'll have a tremendous first 6 weeks of the season, but I could see it dying down very quickly, if not dying altogether with a big-time injury. He's someone I am weary of, and unless Kansas City adds another running back that I feel can actually help Walker, and this is the only time ever, right? You in fantasy football, you're wanting another running back to join the roster and take some of the carries away from your guy, but that's kind of what I'm wanting and what I'm looking for, because I just don't think he can handle the full workload of the number 1 running back without a little bit. And I don't want a big time. I don't want a David Montgomery behind him. I just want a little bit of relief behind him. I don't think Kansas City has it yet. So until that happens, maybe even just like a 3rd or 4th round rookie. That's all I'm looking for. I just need someone to come along, not to mention where he is going to go. If we're talking redraft leagues, you're going to have to take him in the 1st round. I fully believe 1st or 2nd round. I fully believe that. And if we're talking about dynasty leagues, what you're going to have to give up to get him, I think it's just going to be too much. So for right now, I'm kind of out on him until we see something else, some other reason for me to say, you know what, I can ignore that. I'm all in now.